Welcome to the Rock Interview Series with host Thomas S. ORWAT Jr.
Welcome to episode number 75 of the Rock Interview Series. I'm Thomas ORWAT Jr. It is May 13th, 2023, and for this feature, I have Lawrence Gowan, keyboardist, singer, songwriter of the iconic classic rock band Styx, as my special guest. During this interview, Lawrence and I discussed the current Styx North American tour, the band's set list, their most recent release, Crash of the Crown, and how he ended up joining Styx in 1999. In addition, we talk about his Juno award-winning band Gowan, which dominated the Canadian music charts during the mid-1980s with hit singles such as A Criminal Mind, You're a Strange Animal, and Moonlight Desires. So here he is, Lawrence Gowan. Before we get started, please subscribe to the Rock Interview Series. Hey everyone, welcome to the Rock Interview Series. We have the return of Lawrence Gowan of Styx with us today. Lawrence, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing absolutely great. How are you, Thomas?
Oh, I'm doing really good, and I'm glad to be talking to you again. You always give I always look forward to our times chatting together. You always give very interesting and very entertaining interviews. I wanted to start off the interview by talking about a show that you played last Saturday, which was kind of unusual for Styx. You played at the M3 Festival, which features, for the most part, 80s, I guess, glam metal hair bands.
Yeah.
And Styx was the headliner. Tell me about that gig and how did it go down for Styx?
Well, we added a little extra glam to our hair on that day. Quite honestly, it was really fun to play with bands we don't normally play with. It reminded us of when we played at Sweden Rock. You know, we were on the bill with like Ozzy Osbourne and some other metal acts that'll come to mind. And Motorhead was on one of them. We did, etc. So you know, acts that we're not normally paired with, and you begin to wonder how will audiences react to this. Well, we kind of learned quite a while ago at one of those Sweden rock festivals, in fact, that the audiences have much broader ranging taste than you may be aware. I think that generally speaking, the entire classic rock genre has got such a kind of it's kind of been legitimized, or it's respected in the broad sense now, to a degree that we perhaps in the past it wouldn't have been. Had that festival been held, the one you're just saying about the M3 in the 80s, it would have seemed really out of place, because things were very segmented and segregated as far as the various genres and subgenres. But now there's a much broader appeal to that entire genre of classic rock. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see, you know, Queen and Creedence Clearwater Revival on the same kind of thing. You know what I mean? That those would be very separate genres at the time, but would certainly work today if anyone's thinking of booking them.
Yeah. Well, it seems like over, like you mentioned, in Europe, they do kind of have festivals with more musical diversity. And America's taken a little time longer to get to that. But I mean, a lot of people respect Styx. I mean, you know, it might not be one of your, like, you know, top 3 favorite bands, but I mean, there's so much respect for a band like Styx.
Well, it'll be one of your top 3 favorite bands after you've seen the show.
Probably, yeah, that's for sure.
No, you're right though in pointing that out. Europe has always had a much broader range of styles that they've accepted it together in one oeuvre, if you want to call it, one nice bouquet. Whereas here we were probably because our radio. I'm just wondering if because our radio was so formatted that we began to kind of format in our heads as to how these bands should and should not be paired up. But we absolutely had a great time at that M3 Festival. The audience couldn't have been more, they were just over the top enthusiastic. We absolutely had a great time. And the other bands were great. Winger was excellent.
Yeah, I mean, there's you know, those bands have a lot of talented musicians also. I mean, you know, when you get offered a package like that, is that something the band has a conversation about? Like, you know, where you kind of all have to decide if it's something you want to do, or has there ever been a package that you guys said, no, I just don't think that makes sense, and you
Not that I can recall. Not that I can recall. If we do have a conversation about it, it's very brief because, as you know, we play, usually on average somewhere around 100 shows a year. So we know that there's a variety of opportunities, and we like the nuance and the variety of choices of spreading it wider. I mean, we've even played, now that I think about it, we've even played occasionally uh, on the bill where there might be like a big country act. It's unusual that Styx does seem to pair up very well with just about anyone. We do orchestra shows and we do our own show. We do, there's such a variety of ways that we go out and tour, and it's all very interesting. It always brings something that you weren't quite expecting, and that's part of the joy of it.
Yeah, one of the dates that you have coming up that I'm sure that you're really looking forward to is June 2nd in Lewiston, New
Yeah.
York, ARTPARK, right across from the Canadian border. And
Yes,
of course, you grew up in Toronto and Canada, so that's kind of like almost coming home for you.
it is. ARTPARK is such a great. It's such a great event. We haven't played it in a few years now. I think we've done it twice, maybe three times, in fact. And yes, it's just across the border in Lewiston and New York. And for me, it's yes, it is. There's a good Canadian contingency there, with their passports tucked away, uh, like myself. It's I just remember it being a really kind of joyous, event. That whole ARTPARK setup and everything about it is just. I'm really looking forward to it. And it's just a couple of weeks away. So
Yeah,
great.
exactly. And that's it's one of my favorite venues too, living in the Buffalo area my whole life. I mean, I love going to ARTPARK. It's just something magical about that venue. And certain songs you want to hear in that setting. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
song called A Criminal Mind that hasn't been
Yeah.
in the set of Styx yet this year, but I'm really hoping that, since you guys have a break before going to that's added back, because I think that would sound great in that venue, and a lot of your fans would really, really appreciate hearing that song.
Well, I'm going to add your name to the list of the growing list of people who've requested that song for that show. As you know, that's the region for me that where I got some airplay in the United States, although my solo records are not released there. They and I played at the Tralfamadore, and there's been a great association with myself in the whole Buffalo area and the whole Niagara area, because we share airplay. I mean, on my car radio in Toronto, I've got Toronto stations and I've got Buffalo stations, and it's something that we've grown up with, so people are familiar with that song in that area. And Styx, we love playing it. The other guys in the band, they look forward to an opportunity to playing it. So it's quite likely that we'll give the Criminal Mind a good dusting off that day. Can't promise it because I never know exactly what's going to be on the set list until the day. But as I said, I'm going to add your name to the
Awesome. Yeah, the interesting thing, like you said, with the radio stations, I used to listen to Q107
yeah
back in the 80s, and Gowan was like as popular as, like, I don't know, the Rolling Stones. I mean,
yeah
a Strange Animal is constantly played on there. I mean, A
yeah
Criminal Mind, a Strange Animal. I mean, those songs were like songs you'd hear like daily, on that
yeah.
station.
Well, they were played daily on Q on several stations well, stations across Canada, but the ones that we share in our region, you're right. It was played daily on there. I mean, in Toronto, the album went to #1, and it was, I look at the chart now and I see Strange Animal was a #1 record. And it was, it's on the chart above, Phil Collins and Madonna and Duran Duran and all these worldwide acts. So it was kind of quite a feat to kind of get that amount of success with just a Canadian release. But due to that, were it not for that, I doubt I would be in Styx today. It's the way that all played out
Yeah.
that led to me being part of this band. So it's best not to second guess the script that life hands you too much, because there's always good things in there if you're open to them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, but back to Gowan, briefly. I know that in Cleveland, Gowan was also very popular as
Yeah,
well. And
yeah.
how frustrating was it to have such success in Canada. I mean, you were nominated for Juno Awards. A Strange Animal won a Juno Award for the best video of the year. I mean, you had all its success there, and just across the border, I mean, you couldn't get Columbia to release the record. I mean, in America, I mean, that must have been really frustrating. I mean, it must have been like, you probably didn't. How could you understand? How could you accept something like that? It just seems
Thomas,
really weird, like looking back at it.
well, it is, but I wasn't the only one caught in that little vortex. So it's not an isolated case. But without delving too deeply into the minutia of the music industry back then, because you understand there were four major labels that controlled, they were the gatekeepers of who heard what, where on planet Earth. So when you control the market like that, you can control, you really have a stranglehold on how the finances are all moving around. Boring subject. But well, interesting to some people, but not to really, something we want to delve too deeply into. But because I was managed by the same management company, or the same guy named Ray Daniels who manages Rush, we tried to circumvent the situation with Columbia, because I'm signed to an American label, and yet they're only releasing me in Canada. We tried to kind of find a way around that, because WMMS, a station in Cleveland, and also WDVE in Pittsburgh, I should mention them as well, they decided, we really like these songs, we're just going to start playing them, even though the record's not available. And in short order, A Criminal Mind got into the top 20 on WMMS. I went and played a lunchtime concert there. The Cleveland audience, they loved it. And that led to me, opening for Tears for Fears on a national tour, funny enough, throughout America. And then as the song continued to do well, I was asked to come back to Cleveland and open for Foreigner on Foreigner 4 at the Richfield Coliseum? Yeah, I think so. And the audience, they reacted tremendously. And the A&R person for CBS Records, his name should pop into mind as soon as we're finished. When I came off stage, he said exactly what you said. He said, like, listen to that crowd. You must be one of the most frustrated people on earth, because this is really odd that I'm getting nothing from New York. All I can say is, as I said, it wasn't an isolated incident. The company, Columbia Records, CBS, was going through a real big transition right at that time. And that transition involved the sale of CBS Records to Sony. So a lot of artists got caught in that there was a whole, that side of the music business, is that the music industry is quite mired in complexities that you can get, your career can be sidelined because of that. You basically wind up going down a different stream. There were artists that were huge when I would go to England and see, there were artists in England that could play in Wembley and that people in America had never even heard of.
Yeah.
And or very few that would be, say, they'd be in the import bins or something like that, in record stores. It's just the way the world worked at that time. So it's so funny now when people ask me about that, because with the internet, everything's a worldwide. This interview is a worldwide release. Such a thing did not exist necessarily without the blessing of the companies that controlled it back then.
Mm-hmm. Did Columbia ever try to get involved, like, artistically, and like try to like suggest like different styles for you? I mean, back in '82 when you released your first record, and then in '85 when the next record came out, it seemed like that was like right in the middle of heavy metal being the dominant type of music, and hair metal.
Yeah, no, the A&R department for Columbia Records in Toronto, where they were based. Although the company was the president was an American fellow named Bruce Matteo, who's a great supporter. But the A&R department there, Jeff Burns, who signed, like, say, Loverboy, and even another good example is Platinum Blonde. They'd sold over 500,000 in Canada. Same thing kind of happened. So no, they never artistically tried to steer me in any one direction at all. Really, what I looked at that time was that Much Music, MTV, television was the great medium that music had to kind of translate and get to people through. So I focused most of my attention during that period on writing songs that would make for good, dramatic tellings or entertaining tellings in the video setting, because if I got the video on TV, the song would get on the radio, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny, a couple of times MTV in the US did run A Criminal Mind, and I think they ran Strange Animal as well. They might have even run Moonlight Desires once. That was the one from '87 with John Anderson of Yes on that record as well. And it's, when I first joined Styx, it shocked me how, I think they ran it at 3 a.m. or something like that once or twice. It shocked me that the number of people I would meet early on who said, I remember seeing your video, it was on MTV. I'm like, did you ever go to bed? It was odd. Just that's how all pervasive television was in that area prior to the internet, is that people would see things on TV, retain them. And it was, there was this national sense that everyone's, on the same thing at the same time, whereas we all do our own programming now and jump all over the place. We're in Connecticut right now. We played Boston last night. Oh my God, what a great show. What a great venue that was. It's a place called the MGM Music Hall at Fenway. So Fenway Park it's right next to it. And it was about 25 paces between the venue. And they walked us into Fenway before the baseball game just to check it out. But what a beautiful venue we played at. It was excellent. Anyway, we came back here. We're playing here tonight. So I thought the camera angle is very beautiful.
Oh, it kind of looks a bit like Lewiston, New York.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, I can't see the falls anywhere.
Right. I do want to ask another Gowan question, and it's about the music video which you mentioned of A Criminal Mind. I mean, what a great video that is. And I am one of the people that remember watching it on MTV.
Wow.
And, yeah. So I guess I didn't.
You were a late nighter as well.
Yeah, well, I worked late, and that was that was my time to kind of recuperate after work.
Fantastic.
And I always wondered, there was this one part where they're pouring I don't know, plastic on you. And
do you want to explain that part? So
please.
For people that don't know the video, unless you want to run a little clip of it, there's a part where the criminal involved there, the metaphor that I was after, and what I was saying was that they go through a conveyor belt. And it's a little bit like a 60s Batman, to give you a broad kind of notion of what it looks like, kind of episode where the criminals are put on this conveyor belt and they're run through this machine that is basically to help them. Sorry, I can't turn these notifications off. Help them with their reform. So they go through, they get a slap on the wrist, they get tickled or something. It's kind of, it's tongue in cheek, but at the end they are, and the metaphor I wanted it to be was something like they become hardened criminals. So this substance is poured over top of them in this goop. And I said, I want it to look like cement. Well, of course, we couldn't pour cement on everyone. So what we used were, we got boxes and boxes and boxes of Aunt Jemima pancake batter. And that's what it is. It's all this pancake batter being put in. And funny thing is, we needed to shoot the next scene immediately after that because they were set up for it. So I couldn't do the conveyor belt myself because I'd be covered in the pan, and it would take hours to get it off, et cetera, et cetera. So what we did instead was we put my brother, who's the bass player in my solo band, Terry, we put him on the conveyor belt. He's the guy that goes through, and he got the treatment and I didn't. Anyway, that's the way that happened. If anyone ever wants to go, if you go check out A Criminal Mind, Gowan, A Criminal Mind, you'll see that video from the 1980s. There's actually, we sold them all, but I usually have some comic books. There's a comic book of that video that we sell. And if you hold your phone up to the QR code on the front, it'll take you straight to that video.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to buy one of those.
Okay. Another one.
I guess we should get back to Styx here, but I just had, I was a fan of Gowan back, while I was younger, and like I said, being in Buffalo and that, and being so close, I mean, I couldn't escape your music and the brilliance of it, and I hope that Gowan plays in Buffalo or Western New York soon. I know you played St. Catharines last.
I know we played there last December. I hope we do. We have played Fallsview a number. I think we've done 7 times we played at Fallsview, so that's fairly close. There have occasionally been some rumblings of me playing on your side of the border, and I would love to do that, of course, anytime. Funny enough, to tie this to Styx, by the way, the first day that I met the guys to officially become a member of the band, I showed up at Tommy Shaw's house in Hollywood, and we were about to go through. I'd prepared, I think, Crystal Ball, Fooling Yourself, I think, Come Sail Away, and a little bit of something else. And anyway, I was about to play one of those, Lady, I think I was about to play, and I started it, and then Tommy goes, no, don't play a Styx song, play a Criminal Mind, because he knew the song. And that was, by the time I finished it, he said, let's make that a Styx song. So that's why we've recorded it a couple of times on a couple of live records and a DVD, or a couple of live DVDs, actually.
Yeah.
So
We discussed that in our last interview, and it's fascinating for the people that wonder how you got involved in Styx. Gowan actually opened for Styx in Montreal, and I think Quebec in 1997, right? And
that's right.
And that's when Tommy Shaw asked you shortly after that to join Styx, and you officially joined in 1999.
Correct. It was in 99 that he asked. They 97 is where we did that show together. If we discussed that before as well, Thomas, it's I'm not sure if we did or not. It was the new Montreal Forum was built and opened in 1997. And I was booked. Same promoter had Donald K. Donald had me playing in Montreal on the same night as Styx. And about a few weeks before the show, he said, I want to change the venue for your show. I want you to open for Styx. And I remember saying I haven't opened for anyone in Canada for like 14 years. Should I do this? And he said, yes, you should. It's the new Montreal Forum, and you headlined the old Montreal Forum, 12 years ago. Why don't you do this one? It'll just be you're gonna play to people that wouldn't normally get a chance to see you or are going to see Styx. And I also had never seen Styx live, so that's part of the enticement of it. But it was very much a whatever you want to call it, a fairy tale night, because everything kind of worked out amazingly well. We really, musically, it went together well. The audience really reacted strongly to what I had done that night, and the band took note of it. And a couple of years later, they asked me to join.
Yeah, I would think for a band like Styx at that point in their career, I mean, they weren't really setting the world on fire. I mean, they were kind of getting their feet back, and to have an artist that is so popular in that particular venue opening for them, I could see where, they might even be reluctant to have someone like that to kind of steal the thunder. I've seen it before. I've seen like openers like just steal the thunder from like the headliners, and it being miserable for the headliners.
Funny enough, they did it themselves, and again in Montreal, there's a lot of connection there's a lot of similar roads. They opened in 1975, December 75, when Tommy had just joined the band. They had Equinox come out, and John Serluski had left the band, and Tommy joined. They got an opportunity to open a show at the Montreal Forum, the old one, right? And which they did, and they had heard that Sweet Madame Blue had some popularity in Quebec. It was, what they didn't know is it was hugely popular. And when they went into it, all the lighters came on, and the crowd went crazy. And yeah, it was a night of stealing the show. Everyone knew who Styx was in Quebec, and then shortly thereafter, the rest of Canada. And so it's curious that it was also in Montreal where we met, and where I just happened to have one of those nights where they took note, and we're all standing side stage as I was playing. I mean, when I came off, Tommy Shaw said to me, he said, hey, Tommy, he comes up to me immediately. He goes, no one has ever had an encore that opened for Styx, ever. And he said, you just had 3. So he goes, we got it. We'll work together again in future. But he didn't, he wasn't predicting that I would be in the band. It just worked out well as a musical combination. So there's that. Yeah.
Incredible. I want to talk about your most recent record, Crash of the Crown, that was released almost 2 years ago. Great record. I mean, it really stands the test of, I don't want to say it's test of time because it's only been 2 years, but I enjoy it just as much as I enjoy it when I heard it for like the first time. And I'm so happy that you guys are doing a good number of songs from that still in your set list, because a lot of legacy bands, release that record just I don't know why, just to have something out and maybe play one or two songs from it and then
Yeah.
slowly like, back off of it. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that 2 years down the road, you guys are still like, promoting that record.
Thomas, we tested it out, this new way of integrating our new music with the legacy of the band. It's a tricky balancing act for any band that's been around for even more than 5 years, and this band's been around for 50 plus years now, over half a century. And we found when we did the mission, at first we didn't play anything from it. We put it out and we promoted it online, etc. And got a lot of great press about it because it was a strong record, and we knew that it sounded strong next to the biggest albums that Styx had ever had. You could listen to the Mission and not feel this great divide in quality or sonically, and for all kinds of reasons. And but one by one, as people began to say, "Come on, you got to play more from the Mission," we began to add 1 or 2, and then 3, 4, 5 songs, and we we'd bookend them or actually build them right into part of, or segue them with a classic song. So there was this feeling that it was one complete statement in the concert. And from that, enough over the course of a year, enough people got into that album that we thought, okay, let's try booking a night in Las Vegas where we played just the Mission in its entirety, and then we'll come out and do a bunch of the hits. So we did a couple of nights. It ended up being 2 because the first one sold right away, and it was great. The audience completely had over a year to kind of integrate into their thinking of Styx and what the band is, and it led to us doing it in New York. We did it at the Beacon Theater, Boston, Washington, several other cities where we would do Phoenix, the entirety of that album. So we learned from that experience that let people discover the album, keep promoting it, and keep letting people know that it exists. Give them a little taste here and there. But now we're at the point where with Crash to the Crown, the difference with Crash to the Crown was this: 2 weeks after it came out, it got to #1 on the Billboard rock album chart. So it told us already that a good number of people that bought the Mission have already gone out and got this record, sight unseen almost, And from there, so the confidence comes up that you can put a new piece of music in there, and just as long as it fits with the overall theme of the night, audiences will accept it. Tommy does a great bit where he does a Sound the Alarm, which segues straight into Crystal Ball. And those are 2 songs separated by 46 years, and they work so well together, one kind of a handshake with the other. And Chuck and I do a little duet of a piece called Lost at Sea, which leads, of course, into Come Sail Away, as a nautical theme starts to come up. And this is a way of really bringing the audience into the overall arc of this band's long career that is, has encompassed a few great, musicians along the way, and the culmination of which is the band as it exists today.
Yeah. And because of that, have you guys discussed releasing new music anytime soon, or do you have any new music recorded?
We always have new ideas and new things. We haven't had a chance because since we came back from the lockdowns, we really have been touring so incessantly. But we're about to start really getting more serious about some of the newer things that we have kicking around. The only thing with that is, finding the time to begin it. We will begin at some point this year, but already, honest to God, there's such a demand to see Styx now everywhere that we could play every day of the year. So,
I mean, it must be very, very satisfying being in a band with Styx, because there's so much competition now ever since the lockdown of all these bands going out on tour. And it seems like, some bands are like shooting themselves in the foot by allowing like these ridiculously high ticket prices. Like for instance, the Aerosmith Black Crowes tour that everybody would love to see, but the prices are absolutely outrageous, for that. And Styx just, keeps like for the ARTPARK show. I mean, there are expensive tickets, of course, but there are also options where for $30 you can, be on the lawn, and those are decent seats there where you could, get a good view. And Styx is a band that really doesn't have to worry so much about the competition because of your reputation.
There's a lot that, well, good. There's a lot that goes into that. We do try to first of all, there's no kind of elitism, let's call it that, or whatever you want to term it as within the band, because we play all different sizes of venues. Sometimes our tickets are too expensive to my mind, but it depends on the venue, the promoter, the city that it's in. There are all kinds of factors that come into that. So even like last year when we played in Toronto, I was like, oh my God, that's an awfully high ticket price. But then I looked at some other tours and realized, oh, yeah, at whatever we were, at several $100s, which were our tickets were, as opposed to several $1,000s that some other tours were. And I thought, yeah, there's I'm glad we're not that bad, and I'm glad that we have, in the overall course of the year, we have enough gigs, enough shows that we do where they are affordable prices. That might mean sometimes a person may have to fly to, what they call secondary markets, if you want to call it that. So, but the cost of the flight and the hotel and the ticket is quite significantly less than it would be if you were coming to see the band in a large metropolis where there's all kinds of other factors that come into it.
Mm-hmm. Has there been any, and I hope, I think I know the answer to this already, but there hasn't been any discussion of a farewell tour or anything?
No.
Good.
No, it's
because that if you do announce a farewell tour, that means you can tour for another 5 or 10 years. It doesn't really mean anything.
Do we ever know that? Yes, we're well aware of that. I actually would make a joke about that on stage. I remember because the last show I saw before the pandemic, I get to maybe a couple of shows a year, but I was so happy I got to see Elton John, and it was his farewell Yellow Brick Road tour. And I thought, well, I was at the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road tour in 73, 72 or 3. I was 15 anyway. I remember that. And here I am, seeing the farewell Yellow Brick Road tour, over 50 years later, and or close to 50 years later. Let me put it that way. It was the November 2019. So I've seen that tour and I'm thinking, oh, man, that's it. It's fantastic. And then as soon as we came back on the road again, I see he's coming back to play the farewell Yellow Brick Road tour again. I thought, that's great. I hope he says farewell for the next 30 years. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's at the point now where it's really ridiculous. And
it started a long time ago, Thomas. I can tell you, even my mom, I remember her commenting that Frank Sinatra, this will be the last time you get a chance to see him. She was a big Sinatra fan. And then 10 years later, it was still the last chance she got to see him.
Yeah, it was like that with the Who back in '82. I remember seeing them or they played in Toronto. It was supposed to be the last gig, was pay-per-view, and I'm like,
that's
right. All my friends watching that, going, "This will be the last time we ever see the Who ever." And it was
that was my first pay-per-view show that I watched, and I remember thinking at the time, well, Pete Townsend, he's 37. I mean, how do you keep going beyond that?
At 37, right?
Just saw the Who, just a few years ago, and thought, why did we think that way? It's very odd that we had this assumption,
Yeah, I remember when like the Rolling Stones released Some Girls, everyone, was saying, "Oh my God, Mick Jagger's 33. How does he do it?"
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Something I don't know why we thought that way. We just did. Everyone, pretty much everyone did. Even I remember a Mick Jagger article way back where they asked him, "Do you ever think you'll stop?" He said, "Well, I think I'd feel ridiculous doing this." I think that's the word he used. If I was 40 years of age. Well, now he's nearly double that. Right. And he's probably the most fit individual I've ever seen that's closing in on that age, and still delivers. And I don't know why we thought that way. Great jazz musicians and classical musicians in general. A few years back, I got to see B.B. King. It was at a Crossroads Festival. The man was 85 years of age. I believe he was 85. Yeah. He had on the books that year, he had nearly 200 shows.
Wow.
85. And I thought, wow, we got to start picking up the pace. It's making us look bad,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just an odd thing.
Yeah, well, the thing with Styx is that, you guys don't look like, you're a band that's struggling to the finish line. I mean, there's a lot of energy on that stage, and you guys are all very fit. So, I mean, I'm sure it takes a lot of effort too to, maintain that.
To be quite honest, the moment we walk on stage, everyone in the band, it's as if you're 15 or 16 years old again. There's an adrenaline, there's a feeling that happens. It comes from the audience, and it comes from the united spirit of what we're about to present, and that carries us through the show. That carries us through the show, and honestly, we don't feel any age at all during the show. There's no consideration of it. The next morning on the tour bus, everybody knows what age they actually are. And then it becomes the struggle, if you want to call it that, but the intention of the day is get myself ready for that 8 o'clock moment, or 7:30 sometimes, that 8 o'clock moment where we have to walk out on stage and do this again. Sure enough, like magic, it happens.
Yeah, the set that you do currently, you break it up into two sets. I mean, is that mostly for the band, or is it for the audience? Which, it's
A bit of both. A bit
Yeah.
of both. I prefer going over a couple of hours. I prefer now going straight through, but a lot of audience people do like the fact that we play an hour and 10, take a break, and then come back and do another hour. And the break is usually 15, 20 minutes. So it's not a big deal. But yeah, sometimes a lot of people do want that break. And some of the guys in the band enjoy it as well, because they like to kind of give themselves. But once my adrenaline gets going, I don't like it to be interrupted.
Yeah. I just have a couple more questions for you. And again, thank you very much for your time, Lawrence.
Right.
First question is ridiculous. I even have to ask this, but Styx in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, how frustrating is that? I mean, that's just insane to say that.
It's a conversation that comes up only when someone mentions it. Once a year since I've been in the band, so I'm in my 25th year now, and I don't know if it's come up yet this year. It's about a 2-minute conversation at most, maybe even less than that. I would say this. It is very telling, particularly now when we'll be on tour, as we tour so incessantly, and someone who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who we're thrilled to have on the bill with us, is opening the show for Styx. And that's a fantastic thing to happen. But it goes to show that it's not part of what really makes you feel loved or anything like that, but it's the audience itself. That's really where it comes from. I would like to see them get it. Whether I would be included in that or not, it's of no consequence. But I'd like to see the band get it, just as the fact that I've witnessed, what an effect they've had on millions of people around the world. If only for that, I think they would deserve it.
Yeah, well, if that does happen, you absolutely deserve to be there. I mean, you're one of the main reasons that for the last 24 years that band has been playing at the level they've been playing at.
Well, thanks. Please send that to Cleveland.
Okay. And the last question I want to ask is about Gowan, of course. Are there any plans to release another Gowan studio record?
Yes.
I know that there's some material there, and you've been writing.
I started working on an album as long ago as over 10 years now. I can't believe it. And it is in great shape. The only thing is this: I need a 6-month minimum, maybe a year of time to properly promote it when it comes out. I don't like the idea of just putting something out and not having enough time and effort to go and promote that one thing, because things tend to drift on the internet if you're not like on top of it every single day. And Styx is a prime example of that. The focus is all here, and so much of my creative energy now goes towards Styx and the 20 or so. I think we did 20 Gowan shows last year, and so I'm focusing on those as well. So time and focus are what are really necessary to before I'll put something out like that. Now there will be one-off things that will come out. I know right now I'll give you one little insight. There's a piece of music that I'm going to start working on as soon as we get off the phone again, that will wind up in a movie very probably this year. So there are little things like that I'll keep kind of picking at until we finally release another record.
Sounds great. Can't wait to hear it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Lawrence, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks on June 2nd in Lewiston, ARTPARK. I know you guys are gonna kick ass, and I can't wait.
An absolute pleasure to talk to you. I love your background there. You see Gene Simmons and your old
Yeah.
Zeppelin poster there, and
Yep.
I was trying to sneak a peek every once in a while. That's
And my
really
my
stuff.
Kiss platinum or my Kiss Gold record that I won when I was a record store manager. I had the best display in North America, so I won a Kiss award.
Beautiful.
That- Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you very much.
I can see your display skills are still very strong.
Yeah, I wish that the record industry stayed healthy because I would still love to do that job, but I
Yeah.
mean I have to pay the bills, you know. So
Well, you understand exactly how that works. It's the way that I loved going through record stores though, and I
I
still
know, like
now that-
Sam the Record Man and on Young Street in Toronto was like when my parents used to bring me there. It was like the greatest thing
Yeah.
that place they could bring me, you know.
there was a Sam the Record Man outlet store near where I lived in Scarborough, which is in the east end of Toronto. There wasn't a day that I was coming home from school. There wasn't one day that I would miss going in there and just go. I knew the entire store. I looked at every record. I remember one day looking at Grand Illusion, going, "Yeah, that's really good artwork. I wonder what these guys are like."
Yeah, I remember when I got that job, I said, okay, I'm set for life. All those, like, you know, going to college for all those years and all those
Yeah.
courses turned out I'm set for life now at 21.
Yeah,
And it didn't really work out that way, but it was fun while I did it.
it certainly was.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, Lawrence, we'll
I'll
see you.
you.
Take it
See
easy.
you at Art Park, June 2nd.
I'll be there. Front
Styx.
row. See ya.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.